It's Monday. Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Hope everybody had a good weekend out there. I'm joined by Alex Gleitman, recruiting expert extraordinaire, member of BuckeyeHuddle.com, and you can find him only there covering your favorite team, the Ohio State Buckeyes. And let's just get right to it. Coming out of a big recruiting weekend for Ohio State, this is a big recruiting month. I guess maybe let's just start there more. I mean, with the change in recruiting schedules of how everything works now, how important is June recruiting for a major program such as Ohio State?
I, I'm like scared to say this because I guess I'm trying to just think. I don't think there could be a more important month for any school than June right now. You have all your camps, so you're getting evaluations in not only on 2024 guys, but the younger guys as well to start to build your boards and see who you really like. You have official visits mostly taking place in June for the most part. A lot of guys try to make their decisions sometime in July, maybe early August or late June, even before their seasons or camps start. So between those two things, just right then and there, not to mention the fact that like the kids' schedules are more flexible with no school and things like that, and they're able to come up. I can't think. I mean, obviously, there's those big game visit weekends in the fall and some of the junior day stuff and the spring game weekends, but I would say June is the most important weekend for Ohio State and really every other college football program in America.
Yeah, with the acceleration of scheduling and how things are working, it's kind of crazy. I was just talking with one of the local TV guys here right before we jumped on this show, and he was asking me about the camps, and I told him point blank. I said, with the camps coming up, I think it's more important for 25s because Ohio State knows kind of what its board looks like for 24, whether or not they're going to land everybody. Nobody ever lands everybody. I mean, even Alabama knows that, but there there's not a lot of camp offers that exist anymore for that rising senior, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's interesting because you have to play it right. There's the in-state politics, there's the out-of-state politics, but I mean, with so many camps and just all of this stuff, at this point, you really just have to offer anyone that you're like semi interested in, and and then like bring them in, and then decide if you want to take them or not at that point after you put them through a workout. So, I always like to say now it's like an offer, like it's an offer is almost like irrelevant. It's almost like you're interested, and it's like the question you really ask is, can this kid commit or not? Because I think actions speak louder than words these days. And if you're bringing a kid in and you're making him work out in camp, I think it's pretty clear where his situation is versus a kid that can come in on a visit and not have to like strap on a helmet or pads or a pair of cleats. So yeah, I mean it's an accelerated timeline. I'm curious how the unlimited official visits is going to potentially affect some timelines. Some kids may want to wait to visit more places in July and during the season. Or I think more so, it's probably going to be guys commit and then take maybe some extra visits after that, which I don't think is good for college football, or at least if you're on support of the coaches and how they have to manage all this stuff. Probably good for the kids, obviously. So it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think the days of like, the Terry McLaurins or Darren Lees showing up and all of us getting to see up close and personal how that offer comes to be, those are like few and far between these days.
Yeah, whoever decided that December qualifies as the early signing period, I mean, is kind of ridiculous. And I have friends who work at the NC2A, and I did hear from one of them at one point saying, lay off. I mean, lay off. But I mean, I don't understand their mindset at times of how they think that they are helping the athlete, the prospective student athlete at that point or anything else. Certainly not helping the universities. And you're exactly right. I mean, guys are going to commit. I mean, and this is, guys in general, not necessarily Ohio State guys, but guys in general are going to commit and then just go out and still take officials. I mean, you can sit there and go and see great games and get and get that all paid for. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, look, even if you're like commit, and I'm sure we'll talk about a couple of these guys who might be doing some of these things, but if you're committed, like I'm someone who's like my kid, like if you're committed, you're committed. You're you're not looking around. But I understand it's like, hey, you have a free visit to Alabama for like the Alabama LSU game, which could be a top 10 matchup in a night game in October. And you're going to we're going to roll out the red carpet. You're going to have these awesome meals. You're going to party. It's like, how do you tell a 17-year-old kid not to do that to some extent? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and they're going to have a blast, even if they have no intentions of going to Alabama or LSU. So
it's crazy, but let's get into the recruiting weekend that was. And I know that you've been very busy on the social media and on the phone and everything else, talking to guys in Ohio State. Had a pretty nice little list of guys in. I think that the guy that most people are interested in, because it's the position that people are most interested in, is defensive line 2024 out of Melissa, Texas, Nigel Smith. By all accounts, it sounds like Ohio State did a good job there, but how do you sometimes separate every official visit is fantastic. Every official visit is great from, Ohio State really did work there. I mean, Ohio State really made an impact.
Yeah, I think so. I think this was Nigel's like 5th visit to Ohio State, if my numbers are, somewhere in that handful of visits. And the first 4 were all on his own dime over the last couple of years. I mean, there is genuine interest from this kid. I know he really likes Larry Johnson. He really loves the program, everything they have to offer. A lot of official visits are kind of window dressing. Kid takes 5, but really he's kind of deciding between 2 schools, or he knows kind of which way he's leaning. I truly think Nigel is a kid who these official visits are extremely important in him making his decision. And, he knows he's now narrowed it down to his list. It's like Penn State, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State. And those schools have hit the criteria that he's looking for, and they all check those boxes. So now at this point, it's like, where do I feel most comfortable? Where do I feel at home? Where do I feel is the best place that I can trust these coaches and the staff to develop me to get to where I want to go at the next level? And I think he's truly using these official visits to evaluate that. So until all of his visits are done and I speak to him again, I don't know if I can make a call on this recruitment right now, but I think Ohio State, to your point, Kevin, has done everything that they need to do to land this kid. They check the boxes on comfort and relationships. They check the boxes on all the other criteria. I just think the one box they can check versus some of these other schools is proximity to home. And that's where I get a little bit concerned. I mentioned you have Texas, you have Texas A&M, and you have Oklahoma, all of which are drivable. I think he likes Penn State a lot. I'd be surprised if Penn State's the pick. I think it's probably Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, if I had to make an educated guess right now. And the one thing I'm worried about is, I think if Ohio State was located in Norman, Oklahoma, I'd feel pretty good about saying I think Ohio State's the pick, because I think the visit and all the visits up to this point and the relationship has just been so good. But that's where I just get a little bit nervous with Nigel.
I know you've been busy trying to track guys down, so I don't want to ask you about guys that maybe you have not had a chance to talk to. So I'll let you kind of go through and give some insight on some other guys. And if there's anybody else that I'm really interested in, or I think the viewers might be interested in, I may throw it out there, and you may just say, "Well, Noon, I haven't reached him yet." But I mean, who else?
Yeah, no, I think so I'll have an A deck probably today, Monday, or maybe Tuesday, probably Monday. I want to get this out. So, and I'll have more details, but I think, they had 2 committed guys. I won't talk too much about them. That was just good to keep them kind of in the fold, and Max LeBlanc and Jordan Lyle. I think they feel pretty good about where they stand with those guys. I'll just say, I'll leave some for the subscribers, but I'll just say they moved Elijah Moore, wide receiver, from Only Good Counsel in Baltimore. They moved him up, and from June 16th weekend. I think that was very strategic. He was supposed to visit Michigan June 9th. I am not sure if that visit's even going to happen. I think it was very smart of Ohio State to move the visit up to this past weekend. They were supposed to host Keelan Adams next weekend. I don't think that one's happening. They do have Jeremiah McClellan next weekend, I believe, as well. So I think, you just connect the dots there. It was a strong visit. I feel like Ohio State's in the driver's seat there. I'll leave it at that and leave the rest for A-Deck. But I'd watch if the visit happens this coming weekend. I think if it doesn't and it's either delayed or some sort of announcements in the cards, obviously that's a good sign for Ohio State. And then the other kid I'll touch on is Daniel Cruz, offensive lineman from Texas. I think Ohio State's in the pole position right now, and I'll caveat that there are visits to go. I think Texas could be tough to beat, but I think until that visit's taken and we see how Daniel feels, I think Ohio State is in position to land him. And I think that he's a taker, which is what I had questions on, just because are they going to take another interior lineman? And I think they're potentially going to take up to 6 offensive linemen in this class. I think they might look for the right guys, another interior guy and another true tackle to kind of rebuild the depth and the talent in that room, because there's not much of it right now, in my opinion. So I think they got a real shot there. I think the hometown Texas, that could be a real tough one. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But for now, after the official visit, it went really well. I think Ohio State is in a good spot, and I'll leave it for ADEC, Dominic McKinley, Nicholas Rodriguez. Look, there's good visits, really good visits. As you said, it's very rare an official visit doesn't go well. There was one last year, I remember. But it's very rare.
Too, yeah.
99 times out of 100, these are all great visits. But I will say those two have just different circumstances for McKinley and Rodriguez that could lead them to Ohio State or maybe not. And I'll detail that a little bit more on the ADEC. But I think, when you talk about who's in contention, Ohio State's absolutely going to be in the end for both of those guys too. So that's what I'll say about the visitors from this weekend.
And I'm sure you'll probably touch upon this in ADEC too, because people are trying to do the math on wide receivers. And I think that there was a foregone conclusion that it was going to be 3 and hold out for JoJo Trader and see what happens there. And that third was going to be Jeremiah McClellan. You move Elijah Moore up. I mean, Elijah Moore is a very different body type, 6'4", 190 was what I've read. I haven't seen him in person. Yeah. I'll be looking forward, just like everybody else, to checking it out in ADEC. And if you're not a member of Buckeye Huddle, it's the only place you can get Alex Gleitman's ADEC. It is a subscriber-only piece. Give us a look. This is such a huge recruiting month. We're going to be getting into media days in the 23 season before you know it. Check us out. You're not ready to jump all the way into the pool. Try us for a month. See what happens. I mean, if you don't like it, that's fine. But I have a feeling you will like it. If you're watching this show and have Alex and I talking to you about recruiting, I think that you are the right mindset to join Buckeye Huddle and be part of the community, because that is something that we certainly put our name on in terms of recruiting coverage. This is just such a big month, as we touched upon earlier, and I've got your list up from the Huddle message board, and I'm just looking at all of the names. I see Mark Nave listed on the 9th through the 11th. He was at least in town this weekend, whether or not if that was his official or not, but you have to have a feeling that the Armstrong Twins and guys like that are doing everything they can in terms of trying to get in the ears of the guys that maybe they're getting marching orders for, of who the coaches highly covet.
Yeah, I mean, they're an extension of the staff, right? Like, there's guys who are like kind of in every class are just kind of be like more laid back and like not really take on that role. But the Armstrongs, Mark Nave, I mean, James Peoples even. And we'll get into this maybe in a little bit, but the Jeremiah Smiths and Aaron Nolans, who seem to play a little bit of social media game, just kind of, riling up some fan bases. Even those guys behind the scenes have been like advocating for Ohio State. And I think that these guys do it the right way. They understand the process. They just went through it themselves before they committed. I think coming as a peer and being able to talk to someone that's not like trying to sell you like a coach is or whatever. And like, what did you like? What were the things that like made you maybe take a pause and look at other places? Like, why was Ohio State the pick for you? I think that's just so much more powerful coming from one of your peers versus someone who's being paid by the institution to tell you to have to do this. Like, you think about like Al Washington, 1 minute he's selling, Kingston Valamuasa, his first offer is from Ohio State from Al Washington. Then he goes over to Notre Dame and he's telling him how great Notre Dame is. And same thing with James Laurinaitis, right? A year ago, he was telling Sammy Brown and KBA how great Notre Dame was. And now he's talking about how he went to Ohio State. He loves Ohio State. This is why you got to go to Ohio State. So it's much more powerful coming from your peer who just went through the process. And I know you just see all this pro Ohio State stuff, social media from like those types of guys, but behind the scenes, when they have those real heart-to-heart conversations, I think it's really easy for them to say like, this is why it was the pick for me. I know you got to make your own choice, but like, this was my point of view. And maybe it makes guys think a little bit differently sometimes. So it always helps to have those guys on campus. And this coming weekend, I think you got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got like 8 of the commits at minimum that are going to be on campus, helping to sell some of these other top targets in. And I think that that's really great because it does that, but it also like, these are the guys who are going to be your teammates that you're coming in with. Are you comfortable with them? Do you get along with them? You know, some of these guys can end up being your roommates, your best friends for life. And I think that building that bond is really important in helping to try to get some of these kids in the class.
Yeah, we go back to the Mike Brewster class and the Brew Crew and how, how that was like the first, but it's always gone on to a point. We're just living a much more connected world to where these guys, they're, when I was a student, we didn't have cell phones, and we certainly didn't have Twitter and Insta and all 20 other social media platforms that I've never heard of. And it's just so different now than it was back then. But even with like the Brewster class, I mean, it's something that's always kind of gone on, and these guys have kind of gotten in each other's ears. I think that things are just better reported now. And as we talk about better reporting, let's get to the 900-pound monster in the corner of the room. What do you think is going on in the Jeremiah Smith and to a lesser extent Aaron Nolan camps as people Twitter sleuths are like, well, Jeremiah doesn't have Ohio State in his profile, and there's an Aaron Nolan quote about taking visits, and of course people who hate Ohio State have already put Aaron Nolan in Oregon's class. I mean, what are your thoughts there of this campaign?
I think if you pay for Buckeye Huddle already, you should listen to what the people you're paying for are saying. And if you're not a member of Buckeye Huddle, you should pay to hear what we're saying. But no, I just think that I think a lot of this stuff is kids having fun, and they get a riot out of working these fan bases up, whether it's getting a certain fan base excited for a flip or getting the fan base they're committed to, in a frenzy about things. I think until the people that are in the know say that you should be concerned about a Jeremiah Smith or an Aaron Nolan, I don't think you should be. And look, this is how I always put it. Do you want the kids in your class that are committed in your class taking visits elsewhere? No, nobody wants that. The staff doesn't want it. The fans don't want it. Obviously that you don't want that, but there are just some kids that's going to happen, especially those from Florida or the South, where that's just the way it is. And when you talk about Jeremiah Smith, the staff knew that this was going to happen. Like, if the least surprised people in America are Mark Pantoni and Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, that Jeremiah Smith is taking visits to Florida and Georgia and wherever else he may go, I would say their concern is probably like a 1 or a 2 out of 10, with 10 being the most concerned, 1 being the least concerned. And I feel as long as Ryan Day and Brian Hartline are at Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith and Aaron Nolan are going to be Buckeyes. If one of those 2 things change, then I would be very concerned. NIL has certainly changed the way you look at these things too. And sometimes there's offers you can't refuse that end up out there. And that has changed, as we saw last cycle, that completely changed the way, the wind blows. And so I'll never say never, but right now I just think it's all fun and games. And I'm not really concerned when it comes to Ohio State with either of those guys that we talked about. But it's obviously something that we have to monitor and we have to stay on top of. So for now, I'll say I think it's just kids being kids and having fun and going through the process and riling up some fan bases and making some others excited. But I'm not too concerned right now.
Last question. Appreciate you jumping on the show with me here. Sure. I mean, just kind of dovetailing off of that, you have people, certainly people on message boards get concerned, but I think Twitter is even a different level. And, there's just, absolute panic. And then, of course, you get the guys who are like, well, we only want the kids who want to be Buckeyes anyway. So get out. I mean, just how, what is your cautionary tale about fans contacting kids directly through socials?
Just don't do it ever. I mean, look, it's nice to show your support. And when a kid commits or he's interested in the school, I think they all love like seeing the different fans, like being like, come to Ohio State and whatever. They also all know that fans are going to be jerks when it doesn't go their way. And that's just kind of the nature of the business, the blessing and the curse of social media, right? What can you gain? Like, take away the situation of your feeling of the guy taking visits elsewhere, playing with your emotions or whatever. Would you want Jeremiah Smith as a football player on your team? How many Division I schools are there? 130 or whatever. All 130 would want him. All 130 fan bases would want him. So if this is a guy that you would want on your team because he's going to help you potentially win a national championship, forget like any of the things that it's just stupid in general that you care, like, but like, why would you tweet at the kid like, we don't really want you at Ohio State anyway, when there's like a really, really good chance, 90% I'd call it, that he ends up signing with Ohio State anyway? Like, that just makes no logical sense to me. And it's not just Jeremiah, it's anyone. So like, my caution is, no matter how many bourbons you've had or whatever, don't tweet at teenage kids. It's not a good idea ever, football related or not football related.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced that all the people that do that are fans of the schools that they report that they're fans of.
That's
I mean,
true.
I think that there
That
is
true.
certainly a nice little disinformation campaign that goes on out there, and that there are fake Michigan fans who are actually Ohio State fans and vice versa. And I think there's a nice little cottage industry of crap. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to put it any better, but closing thoughts. I promised you I'd keep you 20 minutes. It's been 21. I don't want to go back on my word. Any other thoughts you have as we wrap up the Big Me Kickoff?
I'm just excited for this month. I mean, you guys will be at the camp on June 8th. That's really exciting. Then they got a whole slew of official visitors this coming weekend. There's more camps in between. Like, every weekend, there's a big official visitor weekend for Ohio State in June. And then in between, there's camps. And like, as Kevin said, like, I'm not just selling, like, if you're ever going to give our site, really any site, a shot, like, June is the month. We talked about, that was the first thing we talked about. Like, I would say just like, give us a shot. It's 1 month. It costs less, as Tom Moore loves to say, it costs less than a cheese pizza to give us a shot. You can easily cancel. We're very user friendly at this site, and it's very easy to sign up and cancel, and you control your own membership. Like, there is going to be so much information, and like, they're at what, 13 commitments right now. Like, they could potentially like close to double that by the end of the month, or be in a position to close to double that by the end of the month. Like, this is the time where action is going to happen. So I am just so personally excited about covering that. And it's going to be a fun and wild ride, I think. And this is like, outside of the actual season itself, when the games are played, this is probably the time where there's the most action and things happening that will impact Ohio State's future product on the field.
There you have it. Give up the pizza, join Buckeye Huddle. Your brain will thank you, your waistline will thank you. It's all good. It's all good. So come on board. But Alex, thanks for joining us here. I know you got a lot of stuff to cover, and for you out there, thanks for watching us here on the Big Me Kickoff. Until the next time, we'll talk to you very soon.